British Prime Minister Theresa May delaying a key Brexit vote. Members of Parliament were scheduled to vote on a plan to leave the European Union, but the Prime Minister just delayed it this morning, putting plans for Brexit in chaos and sending the value of the British pound plummeting.
Mr. Speaker, having spent the best part of 2 years poring over the detail of Brexit, listening to the public's ambitions and, yes, their fears too, and testing the limits of what the other side is prepared to accept, I'm in absolutely no doubt that this deal is the right one.
Nigel Farage is the former leader of the UK Independence Party and was instrumental in the Brexit movement. He's also the vice chairman of the Leave Means Leave and a member of the European Parliament. Nigel Farage, welcome. Thank you for coming on the program this morning. Obviously a key morning for Brexit. The next couple days was supposed to be. This vote has now been delayed. What are the implications of that?
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister had struck a deal with the European Union on our withdrawal that many in Parliament, and myself included, thought was a bad deal. In fact, I've coined it the worst deal in history. We were going to give away a huge amount of money. We were potentially going to be trapped in European Union rules indefinitely. None of this actually worked. She realised this morning she was about to lose by a majority of over 200 votes in the House of Commons, something that no government in the history of our ancient Parliament has ever lost by. So at the last minute, she pulled the deal. What does it mean? Number one, it means that her credibility as Prime Minister is now absolutely shot. She has one last chance. She goes to Brussels on Thursday for a meeting with the other 27 presidents and prime ministers of Europe, and she will try to get concessions at that meeting, which she'll bring back to Westminster next week. But I heard her this afternoon speaking to the House of Commons saying that she was going to go to Brussels and seek assurances on the legal certainties. That is not enough. This deal is not going through. And I would predict confidently, by this time next week, you're going to see the UK in one of the biggest constitutional crises it's seen for perhaps over 100 years.
That's a big statement, and it's spooking U.S. markets. While off the lows, our Dow, our stock market's been taking a big hit today. It sunk to the lows of the session on the delay of this vote. The currency market is rocked as a result of this. The British pound falling to a 20-month low against the U.S. dollar. There's a lot of fear out there in the marketplace when looking at this key decision. As far as what we are seeing in France, if I could tie it to that, started out against Macron's carbon tax policy, then it's the fuel tax hikes. It has morphed into something bigger as we continue to watch the violence in that city, the violent protests playing out. We are about to hear from Emmanuel Macron this afternoon, local time, 2 p.m. We expect to hear from him. What is happening there?
Well, please don't think that those violent scenes, those extraordinary scenes you've seen in Paris, please don't think it's confined to that city. This is now spread. It's happening across the whole of France. It's happening in every major city and indeed in some smaller towns too. Last Thursday, there were tax offices out in the regions that were actually being petrol bombed. I mean, this is very close to being a modern-day revolution. And what it's all about, and you're quite right to say that it was green taxes that sparked it off, what it's about is a president of France who is seen to be arrogant, based in Paris, has big ideas about the European Union, about globalist projects, who attacks and denounces nationalism. And what people are saying is these leaders like Macron do not understand their lives. They're working, they're paying their taxes, they're obeying the law, and they're a lot harder up than they were 20 years ago. And, you know, French history is littered with examples of violent uprising bringing change. Now, I'm not suggesting right now that Macron is on the verge of going, but it's worth remembering that 50 years ago, in 1968, the student uprising brought down President de Gaulle, the French hero of World War II. Macron needs very quickly, in this address to the French people today, very quickly to reassure ordinary struggling people he will improve their lives. If he does that, he will quell this uprising. If he doesn't, then I think it's very hard to predict where this could go.
Very strong words from you. We await Emmanuel Macron. He'll be addressing his country at 2 p.m. local time. A very important moment for France. Nigel Farage, thank you.